When we talk about the role of intelligence agencies in Kashmir, I think it has been there for the last 76 years. Indian intelligence agencies have played a huge role. Indians have always been trying to destabilize Azad Kashmir. Indian agencies tried to bribe them.
Viewers, very warm welcome to the new episode of V News English program Perspectives. Viewers, you are aware of several important issues around the world affecting international peace and security. But one of the most important issue affecting not only global peace and security, but in particular that of South Asia is the Kashmir issue. I'm sure you must have heard various aspects and dimensions of the Kashmir issues, its security dimension, its geopolitical dimension, its legal dimension, its humanitarian dimension, and its diplomatic dimension. But today, we are going to discuss one aspect of Kashmir issue which is rarely touched and very little understood. That is the role of intelligence agencies in the Kashmir issue. So today, to discuss this fascinating and insightful aspect of Kashmir issue, we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Altaf Wani. Mr. Altaf Wani has been an activist on Kashmir for over 36 years. He's a famous voice, a very respected figure in the UN Human Rights Council, Geneva, where he is frequently invited to share the Kashmiri's perspective in the UN. Today, we are going to ask Mr. Altaf Wani that we hear a lot about the role of armed forces, law enforcement agencies, and different institutions in Indian-occupied Kashmir. But very little is known and understood about the role of intelligence agencies in the Indian-occupied Kashmir. So can you give us a brief overview of what you understand and know about their objectives and role in Indian-occupied Kashmir?
Thank you, Saeed Mohammadi, for having me in this show. When we talk about the role of intelligence agencies in Kashmir, I think it has been there for the last 76 years. Indian intelligence agencies have played a huge role in shaping the political and social fabric of the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. If you go back from Kamraj plan, when Sheikh Abdullah was dislodged by the Indians and all that, and you come to 71, the Ganga hijacking, which was planned also by the Indian Intelligence Bureau at that time, and thereby provoking the subsequent India-Pakistan war in Bangladesh insurgency, India's role in Bangladesh emergence. That was also rolled up. But when we come to Kashmir again, from the recent resistance movement against the Indians' illegal occupation in occupied Kashmir, which started in 1989, it was popular resistance. India failed to muzzle it through its military means. But after analyzing all pros and cons of this resistance, they saw it's a popular resistance owned by all sects of the people, but the population at large, and in all regions of the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Then Indian agencies thought out a plan at the first that was to infiltrate into the resistance camp.
And when did that attempt by Indian agencies to
It
infiltrate
started
the camp?
well in 1990. It started well in 1990.
Okay.
Though at that time we could not see it purely that they have infiltrated in our ranks in that way. But slowly and steadily, we came to know in 1993 onwards that Indian intelligence agencies have infiltrated in different organizations. Through
What made
different
you
ways.
realize that they have infiltrated?
Because there were certain things which were happening which was not at all at the in our manifesto. That was not in the manifesto of the freedom fighters. They would not like to do that, like the extortion. the extortion of money from the people. There were reports that that man or that organization, that person has done this, he has done this. When we investigated that, when the agency, this organization investigated that, we could found that the man was recruited by the Indian intelligence in order so that when you do extortion, when you do torture the people to extort money from them, then you will lose the popular support among the populations. And this was the first. And then also we saw some of the killings that happened in Kashmir, very famous killings happening in Kashmir, and attributed to the camp of freedom fighters. But after looking at those their pros and cons, we came to know that again those people were infiltrated into the resistance camp through Indian intelligence agencies, different agencies. This has been accepted by their former Raw Chief Amar Singh Daulat in his book. He has in Vajpayee's eras, he writes about them, how the people were working for us, how they did it, and all that. I have one particular thing I will discuss with you, which I have not. One of our colleagues, he was a freedom fighter. He was arrested by the CRPF. This is a story which he told me directly. He was arrested by CRPF. He was a famous commander. Then the CRPF DG at that time came to him and he told him that you work for us. He told him that I won't work. If I will do it, I will lose my credibility, all that. Then he showed him different people who were working already for them, who were already infiltrated by the different agencies in the freedom resistance camp. And outside they had a very huge name, but actually they were working for them. So at the he was then released, but again, in the intra-agency rivalry, he was then abducted by the BSF, and BSF thought he was working for the resistance and all that, and he was then abducted and he disappeared. Then he became the casualty between the two intelligence agencies of India. The intelligence agency was serving the CRPF and the one to the BSF intelligence agency. This is on shortland. And then we saw at different levels that the Indian agencies, they did infiltrate in the armed resistance groups. They did infiltrate. They tried to create their own armed resistance groups. They created the political groups who first will go for the slogan, the right celebration for people of Kashmir or for the independent Kashmir and all that. But then suddenly and slowly, they will try to hijack and all the moment for the purpose of the Indians in order to defend this moment.
So, Tafsab, there are three things which you have shared which are very important and new for our viewers. Number one, their initial attempt aimed at sort of bad-mouthing and reducing the credibility of the Hurriyat movement by attributing and alleging some criminal activities so that they lose the support of the people. That's one aspect. The second aspect is infiltration within the ranks of the Hurriyat leadership. And the third is to create some organizations on the false pretext of Hurriyat banner, but in reality working for the Indian government. Is that the case?
Yes.
Then can you sort of identify an approximate timeline in which all these three tactics sequentially emerged before you, or you came to know?
It has different levels of these things. When I say about the infiltration in the armed resistance groups, it started from 90 onwards. And up till 95, we saw there was a huge infighting between the armed resistance groups. And this all was due to the infiltration by the Indian camps. And we then came to know that some of these people who were infiltrated by the Indian intelligence agencies in the armed groups, they then, when the elections in 1996 were held in Kashmir, some of them got the berth in the Legislative Assembly of Indian occupied Kashmir. So this was the one. And similarly, they encouraged others to do the same so that they could become the elected leaders of the Kashmir. They could become the leaders. So Indian governments are with them, Indian forces are with them, everything, every support will be with them, but they have to come forward and do this. They encouraged many people, and we saw few of them becoming these mouthpieces of India in occupied Kashmir, and some got the highest award of the civilian award of India, Padma Bhushan. So this was also, there's those infiltrators, those people who were working for the Indian agencies in the in the resistance leadership camps. They were those people who were awarded this. And secondly, they also did the same operations outside Kashmir. They did from 93 onwards, they started these operations outside Kashmir. In order to internationally, at the international level, they give the Kashmir resistance a bad name in order to align it with the international terrorism, to give it a name that it is a radical movement and all that. Or for that, they cultivated some of the neo national, or you may say semi-national elements who had already flown out of Kashmir to different places, and they were used. And similarly, Kashmiri Pandits who had gone out of Kashmir, they were used for these operations. And they, in the United Nations, in different think tanks around the globe, they traveled there and tried to in a way, dilute that narrative which the international community was having about the Kashmir, about the atrocities happening in Kashmir, and the real essence of the Kashmir dispute. And they tried to dilute from that, telling that this is a moment which is led by some radical Muslims. This is a moment which is related to the radical Islam. This is a moment related and sponsored by Pakistan, and all that those people who were at different places in the world, some in New York, some in Geneva, some in London, some in different places, they would try to protect it. And then we saw at the different periods of time, we saw those people who were already infiltrated in this moment. Way back in 70, they came back to Srinagar and then started their political career in Srinagar. So this was also an eye-opener for the people, that what was told to us, that this Ganga hijacking like things which were planned by the Indian agencies, we thought at that those people were the heroes. But then one of the Hashim Qureshi, when it came back to Kashmir, no case was lodged against him. He ran freely there, and his son is running another NGO or a think tank in Netherlands, EFSAS, by name EFSAS, and that is also directed in order to damage the Kashmiris' indigenous resistance, directed to create an impression that this is not an indigenous movement of Kashmiris for self-determination, but the sponsored and radical terrorism movement by Pakistan. So that is they are doing it. So this is the second. This was the second phase of it. But similarly, we have seen those elements in Kashmir. We see, in order to create such atmosphere, you might have heard about an incident called Chhati Singhpora, where 36 were killed, and it was told that these were killed by the foreign militants. This was the Indian army's or police version, that those people were killed by the foreign militants, and those were killed by in the night. But when there was hue and cry about those 5 dead bodies, then there was when those bodies were exhumed, and it was found that those were the local Gujar Bakrwals, who India claimed that these were the foreign terrorists. And then CBI inquiry found, it's India's own agency, another agency, finding that this was not the case of the resistance or the foreign militants. This is done by the Indian army, by its agencies. They have planned it in order to earn rewards and in order to create a fear among the minority population in Kashmir.
Altaf sahab, tell me, these realities which you are sharing as an eyewitness, are they? How well are they understood by Hurriyat leadership and by the common Kashmiri people? What is their reaction when they find out about such things?
Uti, everything takes time to understand. It was not easy for a person to understand that who has damaged them. And it was not easy for the Sikhs who damaged them, who killed those Sikhs. But slowly and steadily, when the inquiries were held, and it was then it was thought that at that time Bill Clinton was visiting Kashmir, India, and because of that, Indian agencies planned that murder of Sikhs in order to defame the Kashmiri resistance. And then we saw that U.S. Foreign Office also in their report next year, they said that this was a conspiracy. It was not an attack by the militants on the Sikhs and all that. And the Hurriyat leadership understands it. But unfortunately, when you talk of the how do they react, this Hurriyat leadership is in such a situation in occupied Kashmir that currently whole of the leadership is behind bars in Delhi's Tihar jail. They face different types of, and at the same times, Indian agencies try to bribe them. They have tried a lot to bribe those leaders also, that they should come out, join the mainstream, the Indian stream, and then go free. But our leadership has never succumbed to those pressures of the Indian government. But though at times Indian government claims to be that, but it has never happened so far. But what they did, the other leadership they created, the newer leadership in Kashmir, though that leadership and the one who were the, we say that pro-Indian leadership, who were for the accession with India, or who supported that leadership, they came to this in current elections, and also of the abrogation of Article 370, how the Indian intelligence and how the Indian government is playing with the sentiments of people of Kashmir, how they deal with them through different tactics.
You mentioned several events in which it seems that the different intelligence agencies of India deliberately created an incident which was aimed at creating a bad image, a negative image for the Kashmiris, for the Hurriyat leadership, and for those who internationally support them. Objectively speaking, as a leading human rights activist of Kashmiri origin, has this false flag narrative and this strategy of frequently and repeatedly staging incidents to blame Kashmir and Pakistan, has it worked?
You see, to some extent, it worked for the Indians to a certain period of time until people come to know the truth. I'll tell you one thing. In 1996, one of the incidents that happened in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it's a very, I think people have not much thought about it and much researched about it. When the first elections after 89 were held in occupied Kashmir by the Indian government. At that time, they had a three-pronged strategy. At one side, they tried to convinced Farooq Abdullah and others to contest elections. They were not ready to contest. They convinced them to contest elections. And the National Conference put that we will contest elections only if we are given the 53 position to Kashmir, which was previously in Kashmir. So we will only contest election that. What Indian government did at the same time, Indian intelligence agencies had 5 of our top militant leaders who are in Kashmir, five top militant leaders, they were in a way convinced or hooked or bribed. You may say all these things. They talked to the Deputy Prime Minister of India and to the Vajpayee and other, and this Advani and others at that time. And then the Indian government sent a message to Farooq Abdullah, if you are not going to contest the elections, these are the people who will contest the elections. These are the people with whom we can have the type of parliament we want to have in Kashmir, because they are the top militant leaders in Kashmir. Though all other resistance leadership disowned them at that time. They disowned them that they are not representing us. They have sold us out. We are not with them. They are themselves. But the Indians at the same time, those renegades, which of whom I was talking, who were working on behalf of the Indian government, doing all those bad things, which were then labeled to be done by the resistance camp by the Mujahideen in Kashmir. Those groups were also activated to go for elections, and then in that way, Indian government blackmailed Farooq Abdullah, those top militant leaders, as well as those people who were the renegades of them. And then they held those elections at that. When those top leaders whom I'm talking, then they came to know after a long time that they were used by the Indians as tissues and then thrown out. There was,
But just to reinforce my last question, you travel to Geneva, you travel to New York, and to share your perspective and represent the Kashmiri voice and at the United Nations frequently. Has this strategy of the U.S. Of the Indian intelligence agencies that to create a false flag operation, to blame the Kashmiris in general, and those countries who are supporting them in particular, has this approach worked in diplomacy and in information domain? I will appreciate if you explain this in the context of, on a 15-year-long disinfo lab global
yeah.
operation based on over 700 media outlets spread over 100 countries. So there was a lot of investment
Yeah.
in creating this
Yeah.
negative image and impression. So did it work?
Yes, I'll tell you one thing, that this, with what India started on in Kashmir inside, they substituted the same at diplomatic level through diplomacy and through their academia and through their media. So
Can you explain that a little?
Yeah, I'll explain. At the same time, when they were using these people, their tentacles in Indian occupied Kashmir in different ways to defame, to do such things which will defame them. At the same time, they used certain Kashmiri intellectuals who were recruited by the Indian agencies at international level in different think tanks to create an atmosphere at international level so that they could give an impression what is happening in Kashmir. It is terrorism. It's not the resistance movement. It is not a moment for the independence. It is not a moment for the self-determination. It is a terrorism movement. At that same time, they had the people which I earlier told you, who were in different domains working in India, Indian diplomats, Indian intelligence abroad. They then cultivated this EU Disinfo Lab. If you say for 15 long years, this EU Disinfo Lab worked not only in Geneva, it worked in the EU Parliament. It was too big, you may say, where the decision-making places. One, where you can make and shake the world politics as Geneva by naming and shaming on human rights to anybody, and the other, the European Union, which is the second biggest powerhouse, you may say, where they worked. So the content which was produced and the literature which was spread all over, and in United Nations Human Rights Council, this was all would replicate one thing, that Kashmir movement is not an Indian movement. It is sponsored by Pakistan. It is a terrorist movement, and people of Kashmir are very much happy with the India, and they will bring some people who will say that we are very much happy there is happening terrorism. But what was our duty at that time? We, the people actually who were the victims of the Indian terrorism or Indian agencies, we at our own did give the rebuttals to all this. But unfortunately, people in West started believing it to the extent that they thought that really the Kashmir movement, and some things happened in this region also, they helped them. It was that when there was an operation going in Afghanistan, and then there was something, our and EU relations, Pakistan's EU relations were not good, and that Indians took advantage of that also by giving them a space in a way to condemn us and all that. And that people started believing them. But thanks to the EU Disinfo Lab, who unearthed it all, whole of the things, and then Indians themselves thought that we have invested so much in it, but it has not worked. To add, because we saw the two reports on Kashmir by the Human Rights Council. It was in a way seller on the face of the Indian democracy and Indians, that how these two reports, which were in a FIR against the Indians, what they are doing, their Indian intelligence agencies, Indian military, Indian government, and all that. And then Indians, then again, they have not given it up. They have now introduced a counter disinfo lab.
Explain that. What do you mean by that?
Now they have started another lab that's called counter disinfo. They say now us, we are the disinfo, and they are countering us. They are now giving the impression that I or the other Kashmiris who are pleading the case of Kashmir at international level at different forms. They are working for certain countries. They are working for certain people. They are working against the India, and they have a motive on this. They don't say their motive is to liberate Kashmir from India. They don't say they have been doing it for last 36 years and their ancestors have been doing it. They are just branding us as terrorists, new age terrorists. That these are the people, these are new age terrorists who use social media, who use media, who use their influence at international level to engage people on Kashmir.
But when you visit the site of your think tank, which you head, Kashmir Institute of International Relations, I think it only presents research and credible international resolutions of United Nations, which is a source of information for the international community. Why should somebody try to hack or launch a cyber attack on a human rights organization, which is only trying to help and guide the researchers based on credible international publications and UN resolutions?
This is because already in Indian occupied Kashmir, all those human rights organizations, all those people who are working on this, who are collecting the information, who are disseminating this information, who had a connection with the United Nations human rights system, those have been silenced. Their offices have been closed.
By whom?
By the Indian intelligence agencies, by the Indian NIA, Indian SIA. Those offices have been closed. And the prominent human rights defender like Khurram Parvez, he is put behind bars, again alleging him of the foreign funding, alleging him of that he was working for foreign agencies, while as the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner and United Nations Special Rapporteurs have sent at least 19 communications to government of India from last 2 years, asking them to release Khurram Parvez. And as far as the United Nations Human Rights Defenders went to so far, while addressing the Human Rights Council, she said, Khurram is a human rights defender, not a terrorist. This was the international response. But now the Indians, they see that they have silenced the people inside Kashmir. Now they try to silence. They have crossed the borders. You have seen the FIRs against the people of Kashmiri origin living in UK, living in Canada, living in Turkey and other places. And similarly, the attack on KIR is also the same thing, which they are trying to do, so that already my Twitter handle is banned in India and Indian occupied Kashmir for the last 2 years. So they don't want, because they have already banned all the media. It was in their one thing which they said in their policy, it was not to give the free access to the international media in Kashmir, in order the people should not know what is happening actually in Kashmir. So in that case, they were able to do it. But thanks to this current age technology, they stop one way. There is another way of having the information and all that. And Kashmiri youth who are bearing the brunt of the all repression by the Indian and all these, they have been doing a wonderful job in collecting the information, sending it out, and making world know what India really is. And currently, you see resilience of Kashmiris. You might have seen in elections which were held currently in India for Kashmir, also for the Indian Parliament. One of the people, Engineer Rashid, we call Sheikh Abdul Rashid, he won the election from Baramulla Kupwara constituency and defeated Farooq Abdullah and Sajad Lone, two prominent leaders of Kashmir. Who was why? How it happened? Because the youth of Kashmir, they expressed themselves one way or other way where they are. India can silence our voices at internationally, but we have the other recourses to show our resilience. So that's what people are doing.
But within 24 hours of Prime Minister Modi taking oath for the third term as Indian Prime Minister, again there is a reported incident of an attack on a bus in Jammu, which without any investigation is immediately blamed on Kashmiris or other Hurriyat organizations. So, don't you think that the international community should be able to see through this Indian intelligence game
I think
and not trust it?
I think Indian intelligence has been exposed internationally. Their operations have been exposed from Canada to UK to USA and to even in our places. They have been exposed. Each and every international community's responsible person knows what are the nefarious designs of the Indian agencies in their neighborhood and always as internationally to curb the dissent which they have in their own country. They are using different tools for that. I'll tell you one thing. If you go for the Indian elections, if you go for the BJP's election manifesto, it not had any reference to Pakistan, anything like this time. But after the first phase of elections, BJP came to the conclusion that their development mantra and their all thing is not selling. And then again, they resorted to blackmailing Indian Muslims. It was this time Indian Muslim. But now in other, the defeat which they had in Kashmir 3 constituency, also in Ladakh, and the way they had a tough contest in Jammu also, they think that they will have to do something. And the BJP has ordered their agencies to create some situation in the Jammu region where they can make the Muslims in Jammu an example. Because for some reasons, they have not so far from 1947 till date, the people living in Jammu and the Muslims there, they have not aligned themselves to the India. They have always aligned themselves to the Kashmir, to the Kashmir's movement. But they want to take them to task by creating such incidents, give it a religious color in a way that it was a pilgrimage bus, it has been attacked by some miscreants, and then who are the miscreants? Definitely, if it was a Hindu pilgrimage bus, they will then blame the Muslims for that, and then the Muslims living in that region will face the brunt of that. They will have to be taken to task. This is one thing. I'll tell you, and this international community must understand one thing in this. For last 36 years, there has been an armed rebellion in Kashmir also against the Indian regime, against the Indian operations in Kashmir. But never ever did Kashmiri freedom fighters attack the Amarnath Yatra. They could have done it. It was easy for them to do it, to create some disturbance. And one incident happens, and that too was was not done by the Kashmiri freedom fighters. It was associated with the internal rift between the Indian BSF and the CRPF. In the night, they fired at each other and then blamed that the Kashmir resistance fighters have done it. They never attacked it. Why should we do it? Why should Kashmiris do it, or anybody do it in Riyasi or in Samba for that purpose, to the people going to the other religious sites? Because it was easy for Kashmiris to target the Amarnath shrine. We never did it. And we think that that is their right. They should come. That's a holy place. They should come. They should go. But they should not come there to change the demography of Kashmir. That's what the Kashmiris have always been telling them. So this is again the Indian design after Modi's re-election to do something in Kashmir in order and to create some false impression against Pakistan, as it is near the borders on the recent incident, and then blame Pakistan and Kashmiris for this, and to create an impression again in the Indian public that it is the Modi only which can save you. There is no other way, because Modi in current elections, the way they were thinking of their victory, they could not do that. They are now a minority government, and so I think that is their plan to create such atmosphere.
One last question. What does the Indian intelligence agencies want in Azad Jammu and Kashmir?
Yes.
Recently, there have been some disturbances, and some people have attributed it to attempts by India to destabilize Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Is it there some element of truth in that?
Yeah, I can testify it in such a way that Indians have always been trying to destabilize Azad Kashmir. It's not for the first time they did it. But thanks to the people of Azad Kashmir living at the borderlines of Azad Kashmir, they never became a prey to the Indian gimmicks of involving in any such sabotage in Azad Kashmir for last 76 years. They always became the first defense line of Pakistan there and never tried to do it. But the people, some of the people, they have some grievances. They might be having grievances who have migrated from Azad Kashmir and living in different foreign countries. They have been tamed by the Indian intelligence agencies at different places. And those people took in a way, the advantage of what the local action committee was doing primarily for the subsidized electricity and subsidized this floor, whatever they were demanding. This was a local issue, it was not such an issue. But those people took advantage of this and fueled this agitation in Azad Kashmir. And then some miscreants indulged in it who are paid, who were somewhere, and they started sloganing such slogans, which you see that all that has died now, because people in Azad Kashmir came to know that okay, it was okay to demand the subsidy for the electricity or the floor, but it was not in our genes to have the slogans against Pakistan or for against Pakistan army. This was not there. Never ever I have heard for last 36 years. I am here also. I have never heard such slogans. This is for the first time. So there was those international actors who were really ready to cash on it. They at the same time started the processions in front of Pakistani embassies in London, in different places, in order to cash what was happening in Azad Kashmir. So I do testify it. There was definitely an Indian hand in it, and Indian media, the way Indian media tried to highlight it, the way Indian media portrayed this situation. You will see always Indian media in their prime time showing Azad Kashmir if any procession is happening, maybe for any reason, but they will have a voiceover on it, and that voiceover speaks totally differently what actually people are demanding there. So India tried through their media. On one hand, Indian agencies did it, but on the other hand, Indian media has always been there to give it a flame to any agitation which is happening in Azad Kashmir, and they tried to destabilize Azad Kashmir because it's the only way now for them. They tried militarily to do away with the Kashmiri resistance. They tried using their intelligence. They tried to bribe Kashmiris. They tried each and everything. They had the legal warfare after August 5th in Kashmir to change the demography and to change this political as well as the religious landscape in Kashmir. But they see they are failing. And now the only way remains that it is the Azad Kashmir. If we destabilize Azad Kashmir, we can have a better hand in Indian occupied Kashmir. And that can be, in a way, they think it is a bargaining chip to talks with the Pakistan or other things. That can be also one of the things for them.
Mr. Altaf Sanwani, thank you so much for talking to V News English program Perspectives. It's been a really very insightful discourse, and thank you for bringing out various aspects which were till today not known in the public domain. So, viewers, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's program. Mr. Wani shared four very important things today. That the Kashmir issue is not only determined through its geopolitical, security, and human rights dimensions. There is a very important, critical, covert intelligence dimension, which is not known. But he brought out today four dimensions which are very important: the criminal dimension, the attempt by Indian intelligence to attribute the Hurriyat leadership with crime in order to reduce its popular support; the political dimension, in order to try to infiltrate and buy Hurriyat leadership in order to reduce their commitment to the Kashmir cause; and the third dimension is the information dimension, through which the Indian intelligence agencies have attempted to present the Kashmir issue internationally, globally, as a terrorism case rather than a human rights and diplomatic issue governed by the UN Security Council resolutions. And fourthly, and most importantly, just like Pakistan, the Kashmiris are also a victim of digital terrorism. Thank you for joining us.